When you understand the power of patience and emotional control, you stop feeling the need to rush or force anything. In relationships, especially when emotions are running high, the instinct is often to act quickly, send that message, make that call, check in to see if he's thinking about you. But the moment you resist that urge, the dynamic begins to shift. Patience isn't just about waiting, it's about holding your center, knowing your worth, and trusting that your silence can speak volumes in ways words never could. When you stop reaching out first, you allow the natural space for him to feel the weight of your absence. It's in that quiet space where curiosity begins to grow, where questions start to form in his mind. Questions like, why isn't she chasing me anymore? What's she up to without me? That uncertainty is powerful because it forces him to sit with his thoughts rather than being distracted by your constant presence. Emotional control is the twin pillar to patience. Without it, your resolve will crack the moment you feel lonely or anxious. Emotional control means you don't let fleeting feelings dictate your actions. Instead, you act from a place of calm self assurance. Think of it like a game of chess. Every move you make has weight, and the most impactful moves are often the ones you don't make immediately. When you resist the impulse to text first, you're not playing hard to get for the sake of games. You're allowing him the room to wonder, to miss you, and to initiate from his own desire, not because you prompted it. There's a psychological shift that happens when you master patience in this way. People naturally place higher value on things they have to work for or that feel scarce. If you've always been quick to reply, quick to initiate, or always available, you've trained him to expect your energy as a given. But when you step back, when you hold your space, you break that pattern. Suddenly, what he took for granted begins to feel uncertain. And uncertainty is what drives curiosity, reflection, and ultimately action. It's in those moments of quiet that he starts replaying memories in his mind, remembering your smile, the way you laughed, the energy you brought into his life. And as time passes without hearing from you, those memories grow stronger because there's nothing new from you to dilute them. Patience also teaches you self respect on a deeper level. Instead of letting your mood or sense of worth hinge on his response, you anchor yourself in your own value. You stop asking, why hasn't he reached out yet? And start affirming, if he values me, he will reach out. That shift isn't just about relationships, it's about your entire mindset. You're moving from a place of reaction to a place of quiet confidence. The person who can master emotional control and love is the same person who can handle challenges in life without panicking, without overreacting, and without chasing validation. And here's the truth: silence is far more powerful than constant explanation. When you're always available to explain, to check in, or to remind him of your presence, you remove his need to think for himself about what you mean to him. But when you step back, you create an emotional vacuum. That vacuum is uncomfortable for him, and human nature seeks to fill it. His mind starts working harder to solve the puzzle. Why is she so calm? Why isn't she trying to fix this? Has she moved on? Those questions build a sense of urgency in him, and that urgency drives him to close the gap. Your patience also allows you to observe him more clearly. When you aren't rushing to reach out, you can see how he responds in your absence. Does he step forward? Does he try to reconnect? Does he show through his actions that he values you? These answers are more truthful than anything he might say in a moment of pressure. Patience creates a filter that separates genuine interest from temporary emotion. It's not easy. There will be moments where your emotions rise up, where you feel the sting of missing him, where your mind tells you to just send a quick message. But that's where emotional control comes in. You remind yourself that every time you hold back, you're strengthening your position. You're teaching both yourself and him that your attention is a gift, not a default setting. You're showing that your time and energy belong first to you, and they are only shared with someone who proves they value them. This isn't about playing games, it's about creating the space for truth to surface. If he truly cares, your absence will not go unnoticed. He will feel the gap you leave. He will notice the silence. And in that noticing, he will be reminded of the connection you shared, the way you made him feel, and the role you played in his life. Patience, paired with emotional control, doesn't just bring someone back, it brings them back with a deeper understanding of your value. And if he doesn't come back, that's your proof that your silence revealed something essential. He wasn't willing or able to meet you at the level you deserve. The real beauty is that in this process, you aren't just waiting, you're growing. While he's wondering, you're evolving. You're becoming stronger, more self assured, more magnetic simply by living fully without chasing. That kind of energy is irresistible, and whether it draws him back or attracts someone entirely new, you will stand in a place of power you didn't have before. In the end, patience isn't passive, it's one of the most active forms of self respect you can practice. And emotional control is the force that keeps you grounded while the rest of the world scrambles to figure you out. When you stop making yourself overly available, you shift the entire balance of the relationship without ever having to say a word. Availability is one of the most underestimated currencies in human connection. When you are always there, ready to answer every call, respond to every text instantly, drop your plans at a moment's notice, you unintentionally communicate that your time and attention are easy to get. And when something is easy to get, it's often easy to overlook. By creating a little distance, by prioritizing your own life over constant access to him, you begin to restore the value of your presence in a way that words never could. This doesn't mean becoming cold, dismissive, or playing mind games. It's about recalibrating how much of yourself you give away without being met halfway. When you pull back your availability, you send a subtle but powerful message. My time is valuable. My attention is precious. If you want it, you need to show up for it. This triggers a natural human instinct to want what is no longer immediately accessible. Think about it. When something is abundant, it blends into the background. But when it becomes scarce, suddenly it's all we can think about. Your presence works the same way. By not always being the first to reach out, not always picking up the phone on the first ring, and not rearranging your life for someone who isn't making equal effort, you give him the gift of space, and in that space he begins to feel the shift. He'll notice that your responses are no longer instant, that your energy is no longer constantly pouring into him, that the easy access he once took for granted is no longer there. This change isn't about punishing him, it's about protecting your own emotional resources and allowing him to experience the absence of them. When you make yourself less available, something interesting happens. You start to become more mysterious. Mystery is magnetic. When he can't predict your every move, when he doesn't know what you're doing or who you're with, it creates a gap in his mind. That gap invites curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of renewed attraction. He might start wondering what's keeping you so busy, why you're not as responsive, or who else might be getting the attention he used to have. That wondering compels him to seek you out, to try harder to connect, because now there's a sense of uncertainty, and uncertainty is far more compelling than predictability. This shift also helps you reclaim your independence. Instead of your life revolving around him, you fill your time with things that fulfill you: hobbies, goals, friendships, self care. The more you invest in yourself, the more vibrant and magnetic you become. It's an energy shift that he will feel, even if you never say anything directly. A woman who is living fully without waiting around for a man to make her happy radiates a kind of confidence that draws people in naturally. And when he sees that you are not sitting around waiting for him, it triggers something primal. If he doesn't step up, he might lose you for good. Now, it's important to note that pulling back your availability is not about manipulation. It's about balance. If you've been giving more than you've been receiving, the dynamic is already imbalanced. You're simply correcting that imbalance by giving to yourself as much or more than you've been giving to him. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you self-respecting, and self-respect is one of the most attractive qualities you can have. As you maintain this balance, you'll notice how his behavior changes. Men are naturally competitive when it comes to attention. They value what they have to work for. If he sees that your time is no longer guaranteed, he will either step up and make an effort to earn it back, or he will fade away. Both outcomes work in your favor because they give you clarity. If he steps up, it's because he values you enough to meet your effort. If he fades away, it's because he was never going to give you what you deserve in the first place. Either way, you win. The real power in reducing your availability lies in how it shifts your own mindset. You begin to realize that your happiness doesn't depend on constant validation from him. You stop measuring your worth by how often he calls or texts. Instead, you start valuing yourself in ways that are not tied to his attention at all. This is the key to emotional freedom. You love fully when you choose to, not because you feel obligated or afraid of losing someone. And while at first it might feel uncomfortable to step back, over time you'll see the benefits. You'll notice that he pays more attention, that his words carry more weight, that his gestures mean more because they're not lost in a flood of constant communication. By giving him space to miss you, you make room for him to appreciate you. You give him the opportunity to remember what it's like to want you instead of simply expecting you to be there. So when you stop making yourself overly available, you're not pushing him away, you're inviting him to step forward on his own. You're letting him feel the absence of your constant energy so that when he does get it, it feels special again. And in doing so, you not only raise your value in his eyes, but you also raise it in your own. That is how you create a relationship where respect and effort flow naturally in both directions without begging, chasing, or sacrificing your self-worth. When you stop filling every silence between you with words, actions, or reassurances, you allow the power of quiet to work in your favor. Silence, when used with intention, can be one of the most powerful communication tools in a relationship, not because it's about ignoring or punishing, but because it gives both people space to feel, think, and reflect. Too often, when emotions run high or when we feel uncertainty, the instinct is to rush in and fill the gap. We send the first text, we over-explain, we try to fix what feels off, but in doing so, we take away the very moment that could allow the other person to come to their own realization. Silence has a way of magnifying things. It's in the absence of your voice, your messages, and your presence that he starts to notice the difference. When you're always there to answer, to check in, or to smooth over tension, he doesn't have the space to actually feel the consequences of his actions or inaction. But when you hold back and choose not to chase, that gap becomes something he can't ignore. It gives him time to reflect on his own behavior and to recognize what it feels like not to have you constantly there as a safety net. This approach doesn't mean you're giving him the cold shoulder or playing games. It means you're giving the connection breathing room. You're letting the silence carry a message that words often can't deliver. I'm not going to force my presence where it isn't appreciated. That quiet confidence speaks louder than any speech you could make. It's not about trying to manipulate him into missing you, but about showing that you have the strength to step back when you're not being met with equal energy. Silence also shifts the dynamic because it introduces uncertainty. When someone is used to you always being available, always explaining yourself, always bridging the gap, they begin to take it for granted. But when that stops, they're left wondering, what's going on? Why isn't she reaching out? Has she moved on? That wondering creates a natural pull. Humans are wired to pay attention when a pattern breaks, and your silence disrupts the familiar rhythm enough to spark curiosity and even a sense of urgency. There's also an emotional weight to silence that can't be replicated with constant talking. When you step back and give someone space, you allow them to sit with their own feelings without you trying to manage or guide them. If he cares about you, that space will eventually make him want to close the gap himself. He'll be the one to reach out, to bridge the silence, because he starts to feel the discomfort of it. And when he does, it's because he chose to, not because you pushed him into it. That choice is important because genuine effort always holds more weight than something done out of pressure. The other side of this is how the silence benefits you. It forces you to resist the urge to chase or over-explain, which can be incredibly empowering. Instead of pouring your energy into trying to make someone see your value, you invest it back into yourself. You spend that quiet time focusing on your goals, your hobbies, your growth. The more you do that, the more you shift your mindset from I need him to respond to I'm okay whether he responds or not. That change in energy is not only freeing, but it also makes you more magnetic. People are naturally drawn to someone who radiates self-sufficiency and calm confidence. It's important to remember that silence is not the same as avoidance. You're not running from communication, you're simply choosing not to force it. If and when the moment comes to talk, you'll do so with clarity and strength rather than desperation. The beauty of silence is that it can set the stage for better, more honest conversations because both people have had time to think about what they truly want to say. There will be moments when the silence feels uncomfortable, even heavy. Your instinct might scream at you to break it, but if you can hold steady and trust the process, that discomfort often works in your favor. It's in those moments of absence that someone begins to realize how much they value your presence. They remember the way you made them feel, and they start to wonder if they might lose that for good. That's when silence shifts from being an empty space to being a powerful reminder of what's at stake. In the end, silence is not about shutting him out. It's about allowing the space for him to come in on his own. It's about showing that you're confident enough to let the connection breathe, that you don't need to fill every gap to feel secure, and that you value your own peace enough to step back when necessary. And when he finally does break that silence, it will be because he felt the pull of your absence, and that is a far stronger motivator than anything you could have said to him. Holding your emotional ground when you feel the pull to react is one of the most challenging yet transformative things you can do in a relationship. When emotions run high, it's easy to let frustration, disappointment, or insecurity dictate your response. You might want to lash out, send a long text explaining how you feel, or demand answers right away. But when you operate from that reactive state, you're not acting with clarity, you're acting from a place of impulse, and that often ends up creating more distance instead of building understanding. Emotional control is not about suppressing what you feel, it's about pausing long enough to decide how to express those feelings in a way that serves you and the dynamic you want. When you can resist the urge to immediately react, you allow yourself to step back and see the bigger picture. Maybe he hasn't responded to a message yet, maybe he's acting distant, maybe he's doing something that pushes your boundaries, but instead of matching that energy with panic or anger, you choose to stay centered. That choice sends a strong message about who you are and what you will and won't tolerate. It says you're not here to engage in unnecessary drama or chase after someone who isn't matching your effort. This kind of calm confidence is far more impactful than any heated confrontation could ever be, because it shows you're in control of yourself, not at the mercy of his behavior. Emotional self-control also creates a shift in power without any games or manipulation. People respect those who can keep their composure under pressure because it's rare. Most people get pulled into arguments or start making desperate moves when emotions get stirred. But if you can hold steady, he'll notice. Your restraint becomes a contrast to whatever chaos he might be feeling, and it makes you stand out. It's human nature to be drawn to stability, especially when someone else is uncertain or conflicted. Another important aspect of emotional control is that it allows you to think strategically rather than emotionally. In the heat of the moment, you might want to fix things right away to force a resolution. But the truth is, many situations don't require immediate action, they require thoughtful action. By taking a step back, you give yourself time to figure out if this is even worth engaging with, and if so, how to approach it in a way that aligns with your values. Sometimes the best move is to do nothing for the moment and let the other person make the next move. That's not weakness, that's a deliberate choice to prioritize your peace over instant gratification. This control also protects your self-respect. When you don't let someone's temporary behavior dictate your permanent response, you avoid doing things you might later regret, like sending a hurtful message, making accusations you can't take back, or lowering your standards just to keep the connection alive. Instead, you stay rooted in your worth, knowing that anyone who truly values you will eventually meet you at your level. If they don't, you'll still be standing in your strength, not in a place of desperation. It's worth noting that emotional control doesn't mean you never address problems. It means you choose the time and the way you address them. You wait till you can speak from a calm, grounded place, because that's when your words carry the most weight. You're able to express yourself clearly, set boundaries firmly, and do it all without the cloud of unchecked emotion. That's when real communication happens, not when you're both triggered and reacting, but when you're clear-headed and intentional. When you live in this space of emotional discipline, something else happens. You start attracting different energy from people. You naturally filter out those who thrive on chaos or manipulation because they can't pull you into their emotional storms. Instead, you draw on people who value your stability and match it with their own. This is powerful not just in romantic relationships, but in friendships, family dynamics, and even professional settings. The truth is, the way you respond in emotionally charged moments can completely redefine how someone sees you. If he expects you to react, chase, or crumble under pressure, but instead you remain steady, it changes the entire dynamic. It makes him see you as someone who won't be swayed easily, someone who has standards, and someone who isn't afraid to let go if she's not being treated right. That kind of presence demands respect without you ever having to ask for it. In the end, holding your emotional ground is about choosing your own peace over temporary impulses. It's about remembering that you don't have to attend every emotional battle you're invited to. You can choose when and how to engage, and that choice alone puts you in control of the direction things go. And when you move from that place of calm power, you not only protect your self-respect, you often inspire others to rise to meet you there. One of the most powerful ways to shift the dynamic with someone is to stop pouring your energy into convincing them of your worth and instead focus entirely on embodying it. When you stop chasing, explaining, or trying to make someone see your value, you immediately change the balance of the connection. This isn't about playing games, it's about recognizing that your worth isn't something you have to advertise, it's something that is naturally recognized by those who are capable of appreciating it. The problem is that when you overinvest in someone who is underinvesting in you, it can start to feel like you're auditioning for their approval. That energy is felt, and instead of pulling them closer, it often pushes them away. By shifting your attention inward and building your life in a way that fulfills you regardless of their presence, you begin to radiate a different kind of energy, one that is magnetic instead of needy. People are drawn to those who seem whole and content on their own because it signals strength and self respect. The more you demonstrate that you're not waiting for someone to complete you, the more they start to question why they aren't matching your effort. And that's where the regret begins to grow. You're no longer giving them the comfort of knowing you'll always be there regardless of how they show up. This shift also makes them realize what it actually feels like to not have unlimited access to your time and attention. Emotional availability is a powerful thing when it's directed at the right people, but when you give it to someone who isn't valuing it, it can lose its impact. When you start holding back that constant availability without bitterness, without attitude, simply because you're busy living your own life, it creates an absence they can feel. An absence has a way of amplifying value. This doesn't mean you suddenly become cold or dismissive. In fact, it's the opposite. You remain kind, warm, and consistent in who you are. The difference is that you no longer bend over backwards to make up for their lack of effort. You stop sending that extra text to check in. You stop rearranging your schedule to accommodate them at the last minute. You stop making them the center of your focus when they haven't earned that space. This calm detachment isn't punishment, it's self-respect in action. And because it's so different from what they're used to, it forces them to pay attention. People tend to take for granted what they believe will always be there. The moment that certainty is removed, they're confronted with the possibility of loss. This is when they start replaying memories, rethinking their actions, and wondering why things feel different. Your absence, both physical and emotional, becomes something they notice more than your presence ever did because it disrupts the pattern they relied on. That disruption is where reflection and regret begin to take root. Another important part of this process is keeping your focus on your own growth and happiness instead of monitoring their reaction. When you make this shift only to watch and wait for a response, you're still giving your power away. The true strength comes from genuinely investing in yourself, pursuing your passions, deepening your friendships, taking care of your physical and mental well-being because it makes you feel good, not just because you want to provoke a reaction. Ironically, when you genuinely let go of the outcome, that's often when the most dramatic changes in their behavior occur. It's also worth noting that when you stop overgiving, you give the other person space to step up if they want to. If they don't, that's valuable information too, because it tells you where you really stand. This clarity can save you months or even years of pouring into something that's never going to give you what you need. Either way, you win, because you're no longer stuck in the exhausting cycle of trying to prove your worth to someone who doesn't see it. Ultimately, this approach isn't about controlling the other person, it's about reclaiming control over yourself. It's about breaking the habit of overfunctioning in relationships and learning to let people meet you halfway. It's about shifting from the mindset of, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you, to I'll do whatever it takes to honor myself. And when you make that shift, you stop being an option and start being a choice. One that's either appreciated or missed deeply. And in that space, you'll see the truth. The right person won't need to be reminded of your worth, and the wrong person will always feel your absence more than they ever valued your presence. There comes a point where the most powerful thing you can do is nothing, not in a passive or defeated way, but in a calm, deliberate, self-assured way that communicates more than any words ever could. When you stop trying to convince, explain, or persuade, you're making a quiet but unmistakable statement. You know your worth, and you refuse to lower your standards to keep someone in your life. This silence isn't about playing mind games. It's about creating space, both for you to protect your energy and for them to feel the true impact of your absence. Most people underestimate the weight of silence in a relationship. They believe that keeping the lines of communication open at all costs will keep the connection alive. But when you're the only one reaching out, the only one making plans, the only one showing up, that open line of communication becomes a leash. They don't even have to hold on to, it just trails behind them, giving them the comfort of knowing you'll always be there. The moment you let go of that rope and step back, they're forced to walk on their own. And in that space, they start noticing that something vital has shifted. Silence makes people listen differently. It removes the constant background noise of reassurance and attention, leaving them alone with their own thoughts. This is when they start replaying moments, recalling your words, and wondering why they haven't heard from you. It's not anger that drives them to think about you, it's the sudden void you've left in their daily rhythm. This is the emotional scarcity you create when you stop giving what they've been taking for granted. And when done from a place of self respect rather than manipulation, it's one of the most effective ways to change the dynamic entirely. The beauty of this approach is that it works whether they realize your value and come back or they don't, and either outcome benefits you. If they don't notice your absence, it simply confirms they were never truly invested, and that knowledge allows you to move on without wondering what if. If they do notice and return, it's not because you begged or pressured them, it's because they chose to on their own, which makes their decision far more meaningful. This silence also gives you the opportunity to reconnect with yourself. Instead of filling your energy with constant interactions that leave you drained, you redirect that energy into your own growth. You get back to the hobbies, passions, and relationships that make you feel alive. You start seeing that your happiness doesn't hinge on one person's attention, it's built from the life you're actively creating. The more you focus on this, the stronger and more centered you become, which makes your presence even more powerful when and if you decide to give it again. One of the most important parts of holding this kind of space is resisting the urge to break it too soon. There will be moments when you want to reach out just to check in, when you feel the pull to send a quick message or like one of their posts. But each time you resist, you reinforce your own boundaries and self control. You remind yourself that you're not doing this to provoke a reaction, you're doing it because you deserve to be pursued and valued, not merely tolerated. And here's the thing, the longer you maintain this quiet strength, the clearer it becomes to them that you're not sitting around waiting. They see you moving forward, living fully, and not hinging your life on their next move. That realization can stir something deep inside them, not because they fear losing control, but because they see, maybe for the first time, what life without you actually looks and feels like. The power of not doing is that it's active in its own way. You're not chasing, but you're not shutting down either. You're open to connection, but only if it's mutual. You're willing to share your time and energy, but only with someone who values it. This balance between openness and self-protection is what makes your silence feel powerful rather than petty. In the end, you're teaching them the most important truth about you without ever having to spell it out. Your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. And when someone finally realizes that, they will either step up in ways they never have before, or step aside, clearing space for someone who will.